Hello, Siobhan. Welcome to Tudor History in 10.
Hello, good morning.
Good morning to you. Now, time is always against us, so I won't dilly-dally. I'm going to get straight on and ask you just to introduce yourself and tell us why we're here today. What are we talking about?
Hello, my name is Siobhan Clarke. I've written a book that's been published with art historian Linda Collins. It's called Gloriana, Elizabeth I and the Art of Queenship. It's a biography, and of course, many biographies have been done of Elizabeth, but this is a little bit different. It's using art as a gateway to understanding this iconic queen and her image. So we're putting the portraits in the context of her life, also looking at the cult of Gloriana, which of course includes literature and music.
So, cult is a really good word because I know whenever I think of Elizabeth and paintings and the cult of Gloriana, I think of the Virgin Queen. And I think that's maybe where we're going to focus our attention today is try and unpack a little bit of that and how
Yeah.
that cult came about. So, can you try and explain to us where the cult of the Virgin Queen emerged from, how it emerged, and why?
Well, it's very much tied up with the Reformation and a vacancy. The Virgin Mary not being so important in the new Protestant regime, and Elizabeth stepping into that vacancy. Also, she spoke right from the beginning of her reign. She mentions the idea of remaining a virgin in a 1559 speech to Parliament. She talks about a marble stone that showed to declare a queen reigned such a time, lived and died a virgin. So she's only 25 at this time, but she's obviously thinking about it right from the beginning. There could be personal reasons for this, events from her childhood. She may have feared childbirth. There's so many different aspects. Political reasons are even more compelling. The not being able to really be able to marry a Catholic foreign prince, marrying an Englishman beneath her rank would cause problems because of factions and jealousy, etc., etc. Seeing problems with her own sister, Mary Tudor, and with Mary Queen of Scots, they had problems over their choice of husband. So there are all these different ingredients. Ultimately, having a husband would probably have brought some erosion of Elizabeth's power, and that may even be the most compelling reason. The Scottish ambassador said in 1564, "You will never marry. The Queen of England is too proud to suffer a commander. You are king and queen both." So he summed it up perfectly.
Mm.
Having said that, there's no doubt that Elizabeth was attracted to men. Absolutely, she revelled in the flattery of a succession of favourites and courtiers. So, and there was also no shortage of foreign suitors, and she liked that too. So she uses her marriage possibility as a game, the marriage game. She uses it for diplomacy, and she enjoys mixing romance with diplomacy, encouraging them, sort of letting them hope that one day they might win her hand. And it's just a delicate political balance that she keeps running for decades actually, and all the time positioning herself both with her English male courtiers and her foreign suitors. She positions herself as the unobtainable lady of courtly love.
So quite a complex web of reasons, political, psychological, uh, all come together to form this incredible. And she does it so successfully, doesn't she? I mean, she
Yeah.
really this cult still endures today. This image of her still endures today. And since we're talking about images, and of course that's what you focus on in your book, how do we see that the Virgin Queen portrayed in her portraiture?
So she's displacing the Virgin Mary, and the rose is used. That had been a symbol, a Marian image, a symbol of the Virgin Mary. She uses the moon, the phoenix, ermine, pearls, all images that had been associated with the Virgin Mary, and an emphasis on the sacredness of monarchy. and uses this to counter the doubt about female rule. What would have normally been seen as a failing, she was the first
Mm,
monarch in something like 500 years who didn't try to produce an heir.
mhm.
Elizabeth is so clever that she turns it round into, instead of being a failing, it turns into her advantage because she can position herself as almost a deity. Her accession day is celebrated, as would be a holy day, and it's celebrated for decades. So she's definitely taking the place of the Catholic Virgin Mary of former times, and this is represented time and again in her portraiture. She also likes to be seen as the mother of her people. She felt that her people loved her. That was very important to Elizabeth. The pelican portrait, the pelican is a good example. A bird that fed its young by pecking its own chest. And this represents Elizabeth's unselfish love for her people. And she could also say that she was sacrificing personal happiness that might have come with marriage and children, that she was sacrificing that for her people.
God, the more I hear, because we've talked about this before, but the more I hear you talk about it and the more I think about it, the more I appreciate this is such an act of genius on Elizabeth's part. She is one smart woman. Goodness me, it blows me away. Um, you mentioned lots of different symbols, and I think people will go and see portraits of Elizabeth and they will be able to identify these symbols. Maybe you could just touch on one or two of perhaps the most iconic portraits and just highlight for people what they should pay attention to when they're looking at those portraits.
Well, the most obvious thing will be the pearls, which are symbols of purity, and you'll find them in all her portraits. The phoenix is another bird that is interesting, and that was one of her favourites too. It's a symbol of resurrection and eternal life. Only one phoenix can live at any one time. So it symbolizes her uniqueness. And this is important too. Elizabeth was stating that she was unlike other women. In a way, she had to do this in order to validate her position, a position that was thought to be unnatural for a woman to be in control over men. She can only validate that by saying, "I'm actually not like other women. I am unique." Other symbols are, of course, the crown and sceptre, which represent monarchy and the body politic. And look out for the globe, representing imperial ambitions. And principally in the Armada portrait, where not only does she have a globe, but her fingers rest on the Americas in Virginia, where the first English child had been born in 1587. And so the Elizabethans are now moving beyond England. Her ambitions are growing, as is the country. Another interesting symbol is the armillary sphere, a celestial globe, which was also used by her mother. Anne Boleyn drew a sphere in her Book of Hours. And the sphere refers to the passing of time and the quality of constancy. It's also used to represent wisdom and power, the good relationship that Elizabeth had between herself, her courtiers, and her people. So there's a couple of ideas for people to look out for.
Plenty to be seeing there. Now, the picture is blurring a little bit, so apologies to folk that may be watching, but we're still hearing you loud and clear, which is really important. In fact, we've just got a minute to go of our chat here.
Okay.
So maybe we could start to wrap up our conversation by talking a little bit about, first of all, reminding people of the book and where they can get it, but also maybe talking about how people can connect with you if they'd like to, or any events that you have coming up.
Yes, so I've got quite a few coming up. I'm doing a lecture for the Smithsonian, for the National Archives, for the British Museum. So there's quite a few events coming up. And I have a website, which is the History Guides. That people can connect with me there if they wish to. And the book itself is available to order online. It will be available from Amazon in the US from January. It's available now in the UK to order on Amazon. And there are other, like Book Depository, there are other online outlets where the book can be ordered.
Well, I think that's a fantastic way to finish with 2 seconds to spare. Thank you so much, Siobhan, for joining us on Tudor History in 10.
You're welcome. Thank you for asking me.